Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
This measurement of personality. First of all, it is important to understand why do we even need to measure personality. Okay, now first thing is that it has a lot of theoretical benefit. If you measure personality, you will get to know a lot more about the concept of personality. You'll get to know, what professions are more suitable for people having a particular type of personality. Research is also therefore possible if we measure personality, if we dig deeper into personality. So theories related to personality can be forwarded if we measure, assess personality of different people. Research will be possible, theoretical frameworks will be possible. Also, at times what happens is individuals who have, difficulties in adjustment to people, and they have a feeling that maybe, they have some deficiency in terms of their personality, they visit clinics. So they want to take help of psychologists, as in what are the various deficiencies that they have which make them relatively ill-fitted in a particular society. So now to understand that, it is important to give them a particular test, a tool, an inventory, so as to assess whether they, if it is a working female or a working male, is he, having a good job fit or not, which means as per his personality, is he doing the correct job or not? Is he the kind of project that he's handling? Is it matching with his personality or not? At times what happens is that there are cases where, there are people who are very introvert in nature. And if a company gives them projects which require a lot of team effort, team coordination, etc., they are not able to deliver their best. They are not able to perform well. Because of that, their performance is affected, and somewhere, they start feeling frustrated. Anger also comes in, sets in. Some kind of complexes also start coming in them. So it's important to identify that if this person is feeling, maladjusted in a particular scenario, let's look what is his personality, and how do we do that? By assessing his personality through various methods. You can get to know about a person's weaknesses, about his strengths also, if you give him a particular test and you measure his personality traits. Self-awareness is generated if you measure a person's personality. It's also useful in the selection of leaders. Particular jobs which require, leadership qualities in people, you are able to assess if this particular person who has appeared for the interview, does he have the leadership quality which was requisite for the job? Yes or no? How do you do that? Give him the personality test. You will get an idea whether he has it or not. You'll also be able to determine whether this particular person who has come up for an interview, does he have a stable personality or not? At times it's okay, but for some specific jobs, it's very important that leadership qualities are present in a particular person's personality traits. Stability is foremost for a particular person's personality traits. So to determine that, it's important that tests are given in order to assess whether this person has the requisite traits or not. Now, there are different methods of measuring a person's personality. First one is projective tests. Projective test is basically derived from the word projection. So through this test, what you do is you project your hidden desires, your hidden needs, instincts, impulses, your hidden goals, ambitions, aims, fears onto something, onto the ambiguous stimuli which is presented to you in the particular projective test. So you project it, you reflect your own inner self upon the external object or the stimulus which is presented to you in the particular test. Now, Freud, in his famous theory, had forwarded the concept of conscious, unconscious, and subconscious. When we talk about projective tests, we say that projective tests basically let you understand a person's unconscious. So things that you can not in other manner understand, you can understand it if you use projective tests. So you basically get a peep into a person's hidden motives, hidden fears, impulses, etc. Everything which is suppressed. The person may not be at all aware of it. They come in front through these tests. So basically, you get to know if the person has some kind of hidden quality, hidden virtue, etc. through this test. That's the projective test or technique. So what are the different merits or advantages of using projective tests? First is to evaluate various aspects of one's personality. We also use paper pencil test, which I will take up with you towards a little later in this video. When we're using projective tests, they tell you a lot more than what is really possible through a simple paper pencil test. So a lot of different aspects of personality of a person come forth if you administer these type of tests. Also, these tests are useful to study the conscious as well as essentially the unconscious behaviors of a person. Things that he may be doing in his daily routine, but he may not be aware of. Fears that he may be having for a long time. He may be carrying all those fears, but he's not aware of that. A lot of complexes that he may be having, but he's unaware of that. So a lot of unconscious part of his personality will become visible. In these tests, an individual performs an activity which is unstructured in nature. Now, that's the best part of this particular projective technique, that it's usually an unstructured stimulus, an ambiguous stimulus, a stimulus which is, not really making any sense to the person. That's the beauty of this test or technique, because of which it's very difficult for a particular subject or person to fake his responses. So his true self therefore comes forward. Ambiguous stimulus or the unstructured stimulus could be in the form of cards. These cards have certain ink blots on it, and the psychologist or the professional who's administering this test asks him, what do you see in this card? What is your interpretation of the ink blots which are there? Do you think there is some kind of image formation happening? What exactly it is? Or it could be in the form of some story which the subject has to, create around a particular image which is presented on a card. So it's all very unstructured and ambiguous stimulus which can have a lot of different meanings for different people. Fourth merit is that the nature of these methods is very much secretive. Because it is secretive, the person doesn't get to know what exactly the psychologist is trying to assess in me. Therefore, very smartly the psychologist is able to enter his unconscious. Otherwise, in simple paper pencil test, what happens is when you read questions, at times smart people can make out, okay, so this is what exactly is being measured, and therefore, I need to respond in a particular manner so that it appears that I'm a well-adjusted kind of person with, a developed and a well-developed kind of personality, right? But in these kind of tests, that is the projective tests, the methods are very secretive, where it's very difficult for the person to fake his responses. Now, limitations of these projective tests. They have a lot of advantages, but at the same time, there are certain limitations also. It's important to understand that these tests are relatively costlier as compared to simple paper pencil objective tests. Also, it takes relatively more time in scoring. So a lot of time and effort goes into it to basically understand what the subject is trying to say through his stories or through the responses that he has given to the various ambiguous stimulus. These tests lack objectivity. Now, one person who is interpreting it, one psychologist who is interpreting the responses of the patient who has come in his clinic, for some help that, I feel maladjusted in particular scenario. The way this psychologist interprets the responses, it may be different from the way some other psychologist interprets the responses. So it's all about the way you do it. It's all about subjectivity. It's all about your understanding. Your understanding may be affected by the culture that you're from. It may be affected by the social status that you have, your education, the kind of experiences that you had in the past. Therefore, these kind of tests lack objectivity and they are high on the subjective element. Fourth is, it's important that the people who are interpreting it and also who are administering these tests must be trained persons, must be qualified professionals, trained as well as skilled. It's not possible for a layman to administer them. These tests can also not be self-administered. So it's important that trained persons are there to administer and interpret these tests. Okay. Second category of tests are the non-projective kind of tests. These are the objective tests, also referred to as the simple paper pencil tests. These are the direct method of assessing personality. So there is a set of tests which is there. It has a certain items, 10 items, 15 items, 30 items. The person reads the items and he sees that whether, they are applicable to him or not. And then he, as per the instructions given in the questionnaire, he selects the correct responses. But the problem with these kind of paper pencil tests are, although they are objective in nature, which means that if the psychologist is interpreting or, first of all scoring, and the interpretation that he gives, second psychologist will also give similar interpretation. There's not going to be any difference in that, which means that this brings objectivity in these kind of tests and very low level of subjectivity in these kinds of tests. So that's a major advantage. However, there is, risk of face value. When a person is reading this test, he can make out, okay, so this is being, assessed. They are trying to assess my depressive symptoms. They are trying to assess, somewhere my anxiety levels. So therefore, he fakes his responses. That is a disadvantage of these kinds of tests. Example of paper pencil test is MBTI. It's a very famous test. Full form of MBTI is Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. Then you also have Ising's Personality Questionnaire, revised version. Okay, that finishes this topic. Now, there is, towards the end of this chapter, in your book, you have a question which is, which of the following is not a tool of personality assessment? The options which are given are A. Projective tests, B. Non-projective tests, C. Observational methods, D. Interaction methods. So over here you can mark B as the correct response. We use projective tests to assess personality of a person. We also use non-projective tests. We use observation as a tool to understand a person's personality. Interaction can be marked as the correct response over here, right?